What's up, everybody? Jesse and Chris here in the BRS Fresh studio. We've got special guests, Zach and the man himself, Josh from Josh's Frogs. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're super excited to have you guys all the way from Michigan here to do a very cool collaboration of our two hobbies. The land meets the water, so to speak. We are going to build out this massive 36 by 36 Exo Terra Terrarium. This is a gift from Josh's Frogs to our studio. They're going to show us and show you guys how it's done. There's more water in here than some of the aquariums we keep, you guys. So this is going to be a very cool build. So let's get started.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and put some PVC pipe. It's big enough for a cord from our pump to fit through.
Okay.
So that way, if for some reason that pump gets clogged, it needs to be removed for maintenance. If it dies, you can pull it out without ripping the whole background out.
Awesome.
So, set it in here. Since there's going to be so much water in the bottom of here, I'm not making this go all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to stop it just a little bit from the top to get easy access. And then before we foam the background, this has already been cleaned and prepped. It's really laying out our neat little wood here we got from you guys and a bunch of net pots and letting that and then foaming it in place and letting it cure. I like to see how I can take smaller pieces of wood and make them look like a bottom decomposing part of a stump or multiple pieces of wood and play around with it.
Okay.
Maybe even use some of the net planer pots to kind of hold it in place.
And one of the reasons we use a lot of those wood inside that background is to make it 3D. So instead of just a background that some of the animals can climb on, it creates more usable space inside the terrarium. So the more wood and stuff we have sticking out there, the more usable space there is for animals.
We're going to foam. We're going to start the farthest where it's the hardest to get to. Yeah. Just like Great Stuff spray foam, this stuff's a lot denser. It's black, it's UV resistant, and it'll form a waterproof barrier. We're going to go quick, and what I'm going to do initially is I'm going to touch the deeper parts.
Okay. To
where that'll kind of hold everything together, and then I'm just going to start layering and working my way up the tank towards me.
Okay.
We're going to make sure to at least leave one of these holes open on all these pots so that stuff can drain freely out of it.
So what exactly makes up cocoa?
This is the ground shell of the coconut. So
wow. Okay.
You take the meat portion of the coconut, that's what we eat, and then this is left over. The cool thing about this cocoa fiber is that it absorbs a lot of moisture. So it provides an opportunity to hold a little bit of moisture, helps the plants root, and helps them crawl up the background, where they wouldn't be able to do that if it was just the foam.
Okay. All right, so here we are, day 2, overnight. This is all cured, and we're ready to take the next step. So Zach, where do we go from here?
Cool, so we're basically gonna go ahead and we're going to kind of jiggle the wood around, make sure everything's set in place. It's not uncommon to find a few loose pieces that you can be corrected with super glue, or you can go back and foam again and give it another day, whichever you guys want to do. We'll very carefully, we're gonna stand it up, making sure nothing shifts while we do so, and then vacuum whatever cocoa falls off, vacuum the background, and then we'll get to doing a little bit of trimming around the pump and get the pump installed. So now let's get in there. And that's the top of our waterfall.
So Zach, talk to me about this lighting.
So we want to go a couple different approaches. These are basically LEDs. They're equivalent to like a HOT5. Each one's 54 watts. We have 2 3-footers on here, and that's for like a nice even ambient lighting.
Yep.
And if you use like I love to use like a smart power strip on these.
Okay.
So maybe have one of these come in half an hour before this, and then maybe an hour or 2 before our big, we'll install the bulbs in these. These are big old LED cannons. They can grow plants, 6, 8 feet away. It's like 500 watt equivalent.
Yeah.
So that'll really help keep a lot of our plants that are really light demanding, especially the bromeliads and stuff. We're gonna put it like the tips of the branches, and the air plants really like, they dry out a little bit faster, and also to keep them really colored up.
Okay, well.
So we could have those, and then we could ramp them up and down based on just on time to kind of give like a dawn dusk effect to the tank too. This filter foam, we sell it as like a pond wall. You can use this to kind of, you could imagine if this was a typical vivarium with a false bottom, you could use this to make like a corner pond. You can cut it, and you can use it to protect pumps and various little things. So it's just kind of a easy breezy, little piece you can integrate how you need to.
All right, it's time to aquascape the basin of this, which is a little intimidating because now that's our responsibility.
Yeah.
We got to follow this act.
Here and below, this is where we're confident.
Right. All right, so Zach was telling us that we want to make sure that we build a retaining wall around this pump so it's accessible. We got a couple pieces that I think, first of all, just to introduce this. This is our Canyon petrified stone. Really cool stone. This is our first time actually using it in Escape in the studio.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Excited to try it out.
Yeah.
I was thinking a couple of these stones really will work well because they have flat surfaces that we can stack on. What do you think?
Yeah, the trick is to kind of hide this pump and to kind of have a wall here to where it has, we can still maintenance this as well.
Yeah.
So next we're gonna open up our little substrate barrier, and we're gonna actually use it and create almost like a bag that we can put the drainage layer in and then bring it up across. So it's kind of like almost a liner for that void to keep the soil and the drainage layer in place to allow us to grow some terrestrial plants like right above the water line. Okay. So it's just, fine little bits of kiln-fired clay that actually wick water really well. And so it'll create a lot of surface area. So it's almost like a great biological media. And this is something that'll sit below the water line and slightly above it. Wick a little bit of water up to the plant surface, but also, we'll just make sure that the soil itself stays actually above the water line so it's not getting saturated for these plants that like it a little bit drier than your aquatic stuff. And so this is what we'll go, this will actually be our plant media. This stuff's cool because it's kind of like an all-in-one like tropical vivarium substrate. If we didn't have the waterfall, if we didn't have the misting and stuff, you could actually use this without a false bottom, without that drainage layer, but since we have so much water and stuff, we want to be extra safe. It comes inoculated with like beneficial fungi and stuff that actually help process like your animal waste, and it'll actually host your microfauna, springtail isopods, stuff like that. So cool, if we want to get probably the Thai constellation first out. So this is Calathea. It's a variety commonly called rattlesnake plant. To somebody that looks like a rattlesnake, it's cool. They're known to be a little temperamental. We're going to kind of intermingle it with this philodendron that can get so much larger, knowing that this will eventually kind of grow up and through it. So this is mood moss or pillow moss. This is a cool moss. A lot of times when you put into a tank, what you put in there will live for a few months and die back, but you see all those little antennae on it?
Yeah.
Those are they're sending up little spores. So those are little spore heads. You can kind of just tuck it in there. Think of it almost as like a pot liner. You want to make sure you're not crowding out the root of the plant so much so it's not rooting. So next we're going to pick out what plants we want. As a general rule, I like to kind of go with bigger ones first. And also just in this case, we're going to look at like, okay, what's going to tolerate that fairly wet environment. And as I go, I do like to wrap it in moss a little bit. Not fully, but that'll kind of help retain some of the dirt and also kind of be like a nice topper. These are a variety of alocasia, so a tropical elephant. And these eventually can get massive. And what's nice about them getting massive is you can trim them, or if they outgrow the tank, you know, congratulations, you have a really sweet houseplant. And since this is kind of like a big open area and there's like a void here, this bird's nest fern, like these are the younger leaves or fronds, it'll grow some bigger ones. You can see how big it can come out. So like that'll kind of add almost like a layer to it.
When you put dart frogs in something like this, are they going to go everywhere? I mean, is all of this accessible to them, or do they tend to kind of stay in one place? What do they like to do?
It really depends on the species, how much they spend at different parts of the terrarium. So they're, like a lot of the thumbnails, they'll utilize the entire enclosure and spend most of their time outside the ground. Where some of the larger dart frogs, they're gonna spend most of their time on the ground. They can climb, like a dart frog could make it all the way to the top, but they're gonna spend most of their day on the ground. So it depends on which species you're talking about.
Okay.
Santa Isabel would be another one that does spend a lot of time climbing. And so those guys would spend a lot of time up at the top of the tank and not spend as much time at the bottom. So it's kind of dependent on what species it is.
How wide of a range of selection could we possibly have here with something like this?
So there's a big range of different tree frogs that would go well in something like this. So something that's very arboreal, maybe red eyes or any of the larger tree frogs would do really well in a enclosure like this. And then some of the ones that are more aquatic frogs that spend a lot of their time in the water and up above. So any of the bombinas would be really cool. To any of the reed frogs would do really well. And the cool thing about some of the bombina and reeds is they would actually do breeding in here. So you'd have not only fish in the bottom of it, but you'd have tadpoles on a pretty regular basis in the bottom of that enclosure as they breed right in the enclosure.
Wow, that's awesome.
So in a lot of these phylos, they get nice big stout leaves. So even though a lot of people grow on these houseplants, these are great for your smaller tree frogs because it's a lot of surface area. They'll spend their time at night hanging out, jumping from leaf to leaf and branch to branch. And then during the day, you'll find them curled up on the underside. So this is gonna, eventually these are gonna grow out and you're gonna have a ton of surface area in this.
So behaviorally, what's the difference between a dart frog and a tree frog?
Ooh, good question. So dart frogs are diurnal, which means they're awake during the day. So they're out hopping and moving and eating during the day. Most other tree frogs are nocturnal, which means that they're going to be out and about during the night. So during the day, they're going to be hiding and sleeping. So you take your common like red-eye tree frog, they're a red blob during the middle of the day. So they'll find their spot on one of these leaves. They'll close their eyes so you don't see their red eyes. They'll tuck the blue that's on their sides. They'll tuck that underneath their arms. And it'll be a green blob during the day. They'll be camouflage. And then during the night, they'll turn like a purplish color and they'll walk around the terrarium at night. And so what a lot of people will do, if they're keeping nocturnal frogs like that, is they'll turn the lights cycle to be much earlier. So what they'll do is they'll have the lights come on at 6 a.m. and the lights off at 6 p.m. So that way from 6 p.m. on in the evening, you get to observe the frog walking around the terrarium. Okay. So it's a little bit different.
For substrate, we're gonna go with UNS Bora sand. I really love this color. I feel like you can't go wrong with it.
Okay, so this is looking amazing. Where do we go from here? What are some of the next steps?
So for the bottom, you're going to treat it just like you would an aquarium. So I'm sure you're on top of that. You know, your water changes, watching it, letting it cycle a bit, starting out slow. With all the organic matter in here, it's going to have a little bit of jump start on the cycle process, but you'll maintain it and treat it just like an aquarium. Add fish probably 4 to 6 weeks from now. For the background of this, you're going to mist this a couple times a day. This would be a great tank to install some automatic misting systems like a Mist King on. You know, remember we chock this full of plants. Like this is way overplanted. We want it to visually look really impressive right off the bat. So some plants may outgrow it pretty quickly. Some plants may do better than others. So you're going to be doing some trimming and possibly pulling some plants to get it where you want to. And then 4 to 6 weeks from now, you know, with about 12 hours of light a day, you know, it's going to look like a very, very different tank.
So as far as timers for the pump or for the lights, what kind of, what should that look like?
You could have the waterfall on a timer, or if you're going to eventually have fish in here, that's oxygenating your water. So you want to let it run all the time. Okay. You've got a lot of surface area disturbance and stuff that's going to be taking care of that for you. For the lights, 12 hours a day. Okay. You could stagger when some of the lights are coming on if you wanted to kind of do a dawn-dusk effect. You know, but give them at least with all these full lights on, give them at least 8 hours of that. Probably a total of about 12 hours of light coverage.
Thanks so much for coming out here and spending time with us. This looks amazing. Josh, thank you for us, you know, dedicating time and resources to something like this. We're so honored to have this in our studio.
That's awesome. We really appreciate being able to come out here.
Awesome. Well, great collab. Really appreciate it. I'll be FaceTiming you soon for some care tips on this thing.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.